We are back on MorningLine. Thanks for joining us. Interesting topic. Dr. Richard Tarpey is with us from MTSU, talking about. It's a broad topic, isn't it? How you treat employees at restaurants and airlines and the like, or if you're an employee, how you treat customers, and how it's gotten to the point now where the abuse is so great it's actually impacting the economy. The professor here talking about that. We had someone who waited through the break. Maybe I've asked for callers to talk about experiences maybe they've had of late during the pandemic that affected them one way or the other. And let's see, I don't know. Tom, you're on line too. Tom, good morning. What's on your mind, Tom?
Hi, good morning, Nick. How you doing?
Good. What's up, man?
Well, I'm sitting here trying to fight this traffic.
Take care of yourself, my friend.
I'm the one that's got the one along.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, I'm taking care of it. It's working.
Good.
But just back to the story there. You got a lot of people out there that's anymore since this pandemic and stuff like that happened. They're all in a hurry. They're all in a rush. They're all think they've got to run, and they don't have no consideration towards the people, some of the employees and stuff, because they're trying to work as hard as they can. Mm-hmm. I've sat and watched them.
Yep.
And, really they don't get respect. But now, they work hard enough. They do make mistakes, don't get me wrong. They're trying to work so hard and fast. But, people need to back up and just start being people again and start taking time.
No, I agree. And listen, you take care of yourself. I don't know if it's the American way. If you've ever traveled outside this country, here in America, it's go, 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 go.
It is.
It's fast, fast, fast. We're in a rush. There's not enough hours in the day. I understand that. That's cool. But he's right. Taking a moment, trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes.
Yeah. Yeah, which isn't always easy when you're in a rush, obviously.
Right.
So, interesting points. Yeah, definitely. But the problem is you can't just go out and tell 10 million people to start being nice. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Right. So there's really no good way to address that from any way of political or social or any really mechanism. People just have to realize that on their own.
Yeah. Well, and it goes on both sides too. There are employees out there maybe sometimes that maybe don't trace the customers quite right. And it could be because they feel downtrodden on this. And then we were talking during the break about the importance of maybe having employers, especially in this day and age, recognizing that adage, which I've always thought was stupid. The customer is always right. And I know that's good for business and you don't want to lose a customer. But if a customer is being a jerk, I just don't get a employer that does not back up his employee. And so even more now, don't you think it's important that employers at least understand what their workers are facing?
I do, and I think that's critically important in the retail and the fast food and really the full service restaurant industries. Right. Airlines and healthcare, they've had a lot of support mechanisms for their staff when they're dealing with either belligerent patients or belligerent passengers. But when you look at the restaurant industry and the retail industry, it's important that employees have somebody backing them up, right? So if you have the frontline employee who's getting yelled at because the staff member told them to put a mask on, the managers, the supervisors need to be able to back up that employee. That employee needs to at least believe somebody's behind them.
Sure.
Because they're on their own right there. And the managers are not always on the floor supporting them. So I think it's really important. If you think about getting yelled at and berated on a regular basis for 8 hours a day, it tends to impact your feelings, your emotions, and probably your mental health at some point. We were talking on the break that in a relationship or in a marriage, we call that spousal abuse over a long period of time, right? If somebody berates their spouse over and over and over again, that's grounds for divorce, that's grounds for all kinds of things. Yet these workers on the front lines are getting that every single day over and over and over again. It's got to wear you out.
No, absolutely. Let's take a call from Bonnie. Bonnie, good morning. Hi, Bonnie.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have to respond to your gentleman guest there about how you can't expect to, so many people to change the way they are, that you have to wait for them. They have to realize it themselves. No, you don't. It takes a lot of people actually putting them in their place in a way that is educated and not hateful. But they weren't raised to understand that. I mean, I worked in retail, I worked in fast food, so I know exactly where they're coming from. If it wasn't for the fast food and retail workers, these people would have to do this stuff on their own, and they don't like to admit that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what they need to have it explained to them in a way that they understand that, you know, you may be having a bad day, but don't take it out on these people who are just trying to make a living.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you at all. I'm just wondering, I mean, how do you tangibly do that? I mean, hopefully people come around to that. You know, I mean, you were in that situation. I mean, did you ever have a customer? Do you kind of stop them and say, wait a second, can I explain something to you? And then do they even bother listening is the problem?
Actually, I did many times.
Good for you.
And in fact, even now, as if I go in and, you know, there's a long line, say even at the gas station, the convenience store, and you can sense you can feel people getting agitated.
Yep.
I'm like, and somebody will say something, I'll say, guys, she's doing the best she can, or he's doing the best she can, and somebody's got a problem with it, just let me know.
Yep.
You know, you have to educate people, and sometimes it's just they had a bad day, but oftentimes it's because they were not raised to treat other people with respect.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and Bonnie sounds like someone who is an employer that you would like to have, or someone who works. I mean, you understand what she's saying? I mean, she thinks, okay, you have to educate. I guess you can give it the effort, right?
You can, and I appreciate the point Bonnie brought up. I think the challenge is let's take the employee side first. We can come back to the customer side. So on the employee side, so a lot of the frontline retail individuals, they don't get that kind of training. So you asked Bonnie, can you do that as a frontline person? Can you talk to that belligerent customer and say, hey, we're doing the best we can? That takes some kind of skill, right? Typically what happens when somebody yells at you, the natural reaction is you start getting anxious, and you may eventually work into yelling back, right?
Right.
Employers obviously don't want you to do that.
Right. You're going to try to remain professional.
Right. So it comes back to training.
Yeah.
So a lot of employees in those particular positions don't get a lot of that type of de-escalation training. That's a great strategy that Bonnie's talking about, but I just don't think it's very common out there. Now, going to the customer side, I like what Bonnie said, and I stand by the point of I don't know how you do that. Bonnie had indicated, well, that's people not raised right. Well, how do you correct that? As a society, we can't correct that. It can't fall upon the frontline person at the fast food restaurant to try to correct years of not being raised to appreciate people. And all. So I'm not sure, and my point really was, how do you do that as a society? You can't re-educate everybody. You just can't put them in a room and say, hey, you got to treat people nice. So that was really my point, and I think Bonnie kind of helped make that point, although I understand where she's going. It is doable. The question is, and you asked yourself, Nick, how do you do that? Is there a way to do that? And I don't think there's a way to do that for all of our consumers. I think it'll be a challenge.
Yeah, it is. The one thing I caught, like I said, there was a time with me I was getting frustrated a bit, and then I heard someone, you know, not when I was involved at an actual place, but I was talking about it, and someone who works in that says, Nick, you got to just realize it's not their fault, and, you know, they're very short-staffed, and remind them, and kind of Bonnie was saying, listen, you know, you just got to consider what they're going through right now. And I thought about it, and then I looked at the thing, and of course I cover the news and I recognize it, and that completely gave me an attitude adjustment. Now, prior to the pandemic, like I said, I always treat everyone with respect, and I've always been a good tipper. But I, frankly, if I didn't get the service that I expected, I never really stiffed anyone, but I would go less than what I typically do, which is 20%. Nowadays, whether the service is good or bad, because I know how hard they're working, I'm leaving 25%, period. Right. Okay, and that's just the way I am. Not you would imagine maybe these days a lot of these service industry workers are getting stiffed because there are customers that get upset with having to wait so long. They blame them, and like, you know, they depend on tips.
Right. Yeah. Well,
that makes it harder.
And they make less than minimum wage without tips.
That's right.
In this full service restaurant, at least. Anyway, and I know there's been a lot of proposals out there, and I'm an advocate for laws that would say you can't pay people that way. You can't pay people based on their tips as being part of their guaranteed income, because it's not guaranteed. So I think a lot of people don't think that. Again, it goes back to thinking, taking the time to think. So if you stiff somebody, you're not thinking about, well, that person's only making $5 an hour.
Right. No,
and if I don't give them the tip, they're going to make $5 an hour. Again, it's that thinking all the way through, and it kind of goes back to Bonnie's point of just having the wherewithal to think through the situation and what's the impact on other people.
Exactly. Let's go to Shirley next. Shirley, good morning. Hi, Shirley.
It's Cheryl.
Oh, I'm sorry, Cheryl. Go ahead, Cheryl. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right, Nick. I ain't talked to you in quite some time. But, I just want to know where everybody's common sense is gone. You know, I mean, a lot of the places, fast food places, you can't go in. You have to go through the drive-through. Well, golly, you know, when you pull up and you see this long old line that's before you even order, well, you got to figure you're going to have anywhere from a 15 to 20 minute, maybe even a 30-minute wait. You know, use your head. If you don't want to sit in that line, be patient. Go somewhere else.
Exactly. I mean, I've done that where I wanted to go and I see a line around the building and I'm like, well, I'm just not up for waiting. But, you know, a lot of establishments have, I think, addressed that issue of the line now. Have you seen more and more, and more of the restaurants are opening up, but where they now have their employees outside taking the orders ahead of time, so you don't have to wait till you get to the drive-through kiosk, right? I think Chick-fil-A does that, and they're not the only ones. And they're out there, and they're taking your order, and it makes it move much faster.
Well, it's the warehouse. The warehouse clubs used to do that. They started that years ago.
Yeah, I guess so,
They would come, if you had your cart, I'm thinking Sam's Warehouse, if you had your cart and you were in a line, somebody would come with their little mini cash register, ring everything up, and then when you actually got up there, all you had to do was pay. You were done.
And actually, in a lot of these, you pay right then. They've got the credit card thing, and they swing it. So that's one way around it. But she's right. Common sense, maybe you see something like that, just avoid it. And don't wait in it when you make that choice and then blame someone else.
And again, in high stress, anxiety situations, common sense is the first thing to go.
You're so right. That's the truth. Let's go next to Lynn. Lynn, good morning. Hi, Lynn. Are you there, Lynn?
I am.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay. Let me turn the TV down.
Okay, yeah, good.
Good morning.
Morning.
I work in the service industry also.
Okay.
And I've noticed that as a consumer, I do get impatient, but also as a worker in the service industry, I get frustrated with the way I'm treated, or I see my coworkers treated, because people are so impatient and downright nasty in some cases. I'll just be honest.
Yeah.
And I think what we need to do, what you're doing now, is very important to educate the consumer that this is not somebody that's being lazy and doesn't want to work. This is somebody who is struggling to do their job with all these other little ticks and tacks and hurdles that they have to go through and jump over in order to do their job. So much is stretched out now that people, like, for example, you mentioned the restaurant industry. Yeah. A lot of managers are cooking because the cooks are not there, available. A lot of the people in other industries are stretched because some of their coworkers are out sick with whatever, not necessarily COVID, but just there's not enough compassion for the people who are working. And then that frustrates the people who are working, and they just want to give up.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle there, right?
It is. Yeah, so what Lynn just said kind of got me thinking, tying that back to what previous caller Bonnie had indicated. So shows like this, you know, there's a possibility as far as getting messages across of what fast food and retail workers go through. And then the bigger challenge, social media, right? So we're all conditioned through social media for the negative stories. That's all we see is the negative stories. Just this weekend, I was looking, and I don't know how many NFL stadiums had fights. Yep. You know, Minnesota and whoever Minnesota was playing, they had a big video of fights in the stands and fights in the alleyways, whatever you call them. Concourse, yeah. And that's all we see now. Right, because that's news. Everybody's a photojournalist. They just whip out the phone, and I can just, and it hits social media, and then it gets to mainline media quick, so everybody sees it. So unless we could find a way to start showing some positive social media, that's a possible avenue toward bodies.
It's to the point. It'll be newsworthy for me. Maybe I'll just record it. I've got a big Facebook following. I'll get my phone out. When I make my order, get in, get my food, and drive through in under 3 minutes or something like that, which I go, wow, okay. And that's news. Used to be that's the norm. Now it's news, again, no one's fault, but it's like, oh, that's positive news, you know, along those lines. But on the other hand, we were talking before the show, a story that we aired here at News Channel 5, everyone aired it basically. There was a case where a woman was upset with her French fries, and so she pulled a gun on someone at a fast food joint. It's just not good. Look, we'll take a break. Appreciate hearing from your calls. The callers here telling stories from whichever side you're on, your observations. Love to hear about that. We'll take more of those calls. And again, I want to get more into just ultimately how this affects the economy as well, big picture with the professor here, because it does one way or the other, and that certainly affects all of us, whether you go out and shop or not. We'll be back right after this.